material phenomenon. Okay. Page 217. None that I know of would reject the proposition that a single fertilized egg cell, the classic specimen of developmental biology, contains the full and complete set of instructions to transform itself into a complex multicellular organism. Neither would any respectable creationist challenge the assertion that every step of that development process is ultimately explainable in terms of the material processes of chemistry and physics. Miracles aren't required. The complexities of molecular biology will do just fine for now. That's okay. This means that the biological world of today, which we can test and study, we can analyze, we can dissect it, we can look at it, we can do all kinds of stuff with the material world we're in right now, and we are doing these things, is one that works according to purely material rules. That's what we've discovered. We may as well face the music. This material world works by material rules. Okay, I can accept that. But this world is one in which also one believes as a matter of faith and accepts sincerely the tenet that God can and does work His will. Okay, as a believer, I believe that also. Obviously, they do not see any conflict in the idea that God can carry out the work He chooses to in a way that is consistent with the fully materialist view of biology that emerges from contemporary biology. I can accept that. But there's the rub. Curiously, they somehow regard those very same mechanisms, which are adequate to explain God's power in the present right now, they say they are inadequate to explain God's agency in the past. This is the creationist he's talking about. Now listen to this. For some reason, God acted in the past in ways that He does not act in the present, according to creationists, despite the fact that we assume in the present that He can do anything and everything. This inconsistent reasoning is at the heart of their desperation to show that evolution, which depends on the material mechanisms of biochemistry and genetics, evolution could not have created the multitude of new species that have appeared throughout the geological record of life. Why? Such reasoning shows a curious lack of faith in the creative power of God. This is the problem with the creationists. Creationists act as though compelled to go into the past for evidence of God's work, yet they ridicule the deist notion of a designer God who's been snoozing ever since His great work was finished. They want a God who is active, and active right now, as does any believer. But why then are the creationists so determined to fix in the past in the supposed impossibility of material mechanisms to originate species, the only definitive signs of God's work? If they believe in an active and a present God, a God who can work His will in the present in ways consistent with scientific materialism, then why couldn't that same God have worked His will in exactly those same ways in the past? Are you getting this? The creationists are completely inconsistent with their idea on God. Now, the more sensible and the more self-consistent position scientifically and theologically would be quite different from the creationist logic. The real, actual working world that we see around us every single day is one that is ruled by chemistry and physics. Life works according to its laws. If God is real, this biochemical, physical world is the one that He has to work in. Therefore, any effort to view God's work in light of modern science must find a way to understand how His will can be accommodated at all times, not just in the distant past. Now that's consistency. I like Miller on this. Sadly, the creationists reject this notion, which leads to a remarkable conclusion. Namely that the true deists, the one who presuppose a period of creative power only in the past, followed by passive inaction in the present, are actually the creationists. Wow. By holding steadfastly to the view that the observable material processes of evolution could never explain the appearance of new species, they cast themselves, ironically, into the deist mold. Our creationists today are simply deists. Their view of God places unintentional but profound limits upon God's actions in the present right now. They require that his power to originate species be banished to a period in the past, and in so doing limit his ability to act today, in the present. Their God created and destroyed countless species in bursts of miraculous non-material activity in the distant past. But in their deist present, he is curiously constrained from such actions. That's the inconsistency of the creationists. Neither Christian theology nor scientific theory contains justification for such limitations. In the traditional view of God's power held by all Western religions, God's presence and his power are part of the continuing truth of existence. What this means in plain and simple terms is that ordinary processes rooted in the genuine materialism of science ought to be sufficient to allow for God's work yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's the theological conundrum that the scientific creationists and intelligent designers have today. Ken Miller wipes it out. If you're not reading Ken Miller, you're missing out. You need to. He's fabulous. Now I'm going to share about his science of belief here in a minute. I got to build up my fire. I'm cold. Okay. On pages 218 and 219, he discusses this idea of a science of belief. And I think it's an interesting idea here. At the end of the day, the stunning successes of the life and material sciences have forever changed our picture of our world, and they truly have. We've grown up as a species, if only because we now know where and how to look for answers. We therefore seek materialistic and scientific explanations for the things around us. The superstitions that hobbled our ancestors have been overcome, and our ancestors have given us stewardship of this planet to a degree that the biblical writers could hardly have even imagined. With the smoke of so many victories in the air, why not celebrate the triumph of materialism? Why not proclaim the absolute death of religious belief? That's what the atheists want us to do. Why not assert in Richard Lewontin's words that it is time to accept science as the only begetter of truth? Why not take Faust's bargain? Well, part of the reason is, as we've seen, is that science has an inherent limitation in how much it can tell us about reality. Because of this, it would be a serious scientific mistake to assert that the successes of molecular biology and biochemistry in explaining how living things work, and they do that, no question, but it would be a mistake. And the complementary processes of evolution in explaining how they got that way can justifiably, triumphantly present an anti-theistic materialism. No matter how hard we probe, the peculiar quantum nature of reality does not allow us to predict the behavior of even a single electron with certainty. And this uncertainty, which theory suggests we can never overcome, prevents science from ever attaining a complete understanding of nature. So what? The extreme materialist is going to answer, who cares? You're missing the point. Why does it matter if a few events in the atomic level are unpredictable? or even if life itself is built upon an apparatus that amplifies those events into significance. It matters. It matters. Because materialistic science, even in principle, cannot tell us why